The Ark of the Covenant, ancient technology or divine presence. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the story of a wooden chest that has literally captivated the world for millennia. We are asking a very specific, fascinating question. Was this thing an ancient piece of technology or a true manifestation of divine presence? Let's get right into it.
Was the Ark of the Covenant an ancient divine technology? Okay, let's really unpack this. This is the central, provocative question we have to ask ourselves as we look at the historical accounts. Was the Ark actually a piece of ancient, functioning machinery? Now, to some, that idea might sound a bit like pure science fiction. But, when you carefully examine the ancient descriptions of the Ark, you quickly realize it was absolutely unlike anything else in the ancient world.
The greatest archaeological mystery in history, hidden for centuries. People have been relentlessly searching for this thing for hundreds of years. Some believe it was carefully hidden just before the destruction of Jerusalem, while others claim it rests in a secret location right now just waiting to be revealed. Hopefully not by melting anyone's face off in the process, right? Because of all this, many have rightly called it the ultimate lost artifact. But beyond the physical hunt itself, the real mystery lies in how it functioned, how it was built, and what it was truly designed to do.
Built by precise, divine instruction, not human invention. What's incredibly fascinating here is that the Ark of the Covenant was not designed by Moses. Unlike human inventions where, an engineer draws up the blueprints, every single measurement, every material, every minute detail of its construction came directly from divine instruction. God himself provided the exact specifications. It was quite literally a blueprint from the divine.
Acacia wood overlaid with pure gold. Dimensions: 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5 cubits, and those specifications were unbelievably precise. God commanded Moses to build the core of the ark from acacia wood, and then overlay it completely with pure gold, both inside and out. But here's the absolutely critical detail. No one was ever permitted to touch the ark directly. Gold rings were permanently attached to its sides so that specific wooden poles could be inserted. Transporting it required strict, absolute obedience to these handling instructions, no exceptions. The mercy seat, the pure gold lid featuring 2 cherubim, acting as the designated earthly meeting place for God's presence. So, that brings us to the lid of the ark. This was made entirely of solid, pure gold. On each end stood 2 golden cherubim with their wings stretched toward one another. But we have to understand, this stunning golden lid was not an idol to be worshipped, and it definitely wasn't believed to physically contain God in a box. Rather, between those cherubim was the unique, designated earthly meeting place where God declared his presence would actually manifest and dwell among his people. It completely set the ark apart from every other object in Israel's worship. Inside the ark, stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod that miraculously budded, and a golden jar filled with supernatural manna. These contents brilliantly illustrate the ark's incredible internal significance. Inside this chest were 3 highly specific items, and each of these unique objects directly testified to a different aspect of God's relationship with them: his covenant, his ultimate authority, and his miraculous provision in the wilderness. 3 supernatural events. Day 1, priests step in and the Jordan River parts. Day 7, the walls of Jericho collapse after the final trumpet. Years later, the captured ark shatters the Philistine idol Dagon. Now this is what makes the ark so fascinating and what really fuels those technological theories. These are the extraordinary supernatural case files connected to it. Whenever Israel carried the ark according to God's instructions, reality itself seemed to bend. Flowing waters completely stopped to let a nation cross. Impenetrable walls collapsed. And when the Philistines captured the ark as a trophy of war, they awoke to find their idol, Dagon, fallen face down, and the next day completely shattered. Devastating plagues swept their cities until they were absolutely terrified enough to send it back. The oxen stumbled, and Uzzah instinctively reached out to steady the falling ark. Now, the previous events established the sheer power surrounding the ark, but perhaps the most sobering historical account concerns a man named Uzzah. Years later, as the ark was being transported on a cart, the oxen pulling it suddenly stumbled. Uzzah did what literally any of us would do in that situation. He instinctively reached out his hand to steady the sacred chest and prevent it from crashing to the dirt. Immediately, he died, just like that. To a lot of modern readers, this narrative shock feels, entirely arbitrary, right? I mean, why would a man be struck down simply for trying to help? A deadly reminder that God's holy presence cannot be approached casually. The answer to why actually lies in those early, strict handling instructions we looked at. The ark was never to be touched directly, and it was only supposed to be carried by designated Levites using the specific poles provided, definitely not placed on an ox cart. Uzzah's sudden death wasn't just some random punishment. It was a defining, deadly reminder that God's extreme holiness cannot be approached casually. You can only imagine the sheer terror of carrying what effectively acted as a highly lethal golden divine battery. It was the devastating consequence of disregarding explicit commands. Comparing two theories. We have the technological view, a capacitor, a physical power source, natural forces. And the biblical view, divine presence, extreme holiness, God's intervention. Let's see how this builds, because this lethal reputation has fueled a massive modern debate. Because of stories like Jericho and Uzzah, researchers have proposed some wild theories. They look at the gold construction, the wooden core, the lethal warnings, and they compare it to a modern capacitor capable of storing a massive electrical energy, imagining the ark as an ancient physical power source. But we have to contrast that directly with the traditional biblical narrative, which completely rejects natural forces and attributes every single supernatural event to divine presence and direct intervention by God himself. Without God's presence, the ark was simply wood and gold. So the crucial point we have to take away is this: the ancient text never once describes a machine. The ark possessed absolutely no independent physical power of its own. It wasn't designed to impress people with advanced engineering. Without God's presence resting upon it, it was simply a box made of wood and gold. While scientific investigation is always incredibly valuable, the source material insists this specific mystery just cannot be reduced to physical mechanics. Let's decode this table. Acacia wood represents humanity. Pure gold represents divine glory. The mercy seat represents God's mercy covering his law. So instead of a machine, the ark was a masterpiece of profound spiritual symbolism. Within Christian theology, everything about the construction of the ark was actually seen as pointing beyond itself toward a much greater plan of redemption. It's like a giant puzzle where every piece, the wood, the gold, the blood sprinkled on the mercy seat by the high priest, speaks beautifully of God's ultimate plan. Through Christ's sacrifice, the temple veil tore, opening access to God. In this redemptive theme entirely culminates in the New Testament. For centuries, the ark had remained hidden behind a thick, massive veil in the most holy place of the temple, accessible only by the high priest once a year. But the texts state that when Jesus died on the cross, that temple veil tore violently from top to bottom. This monumental event signified to early Christians that the physical ark was no longer hidden, and more importantly, it was no longer the exclusive center of God's relationship with humanity. Access to God's presence was symbolically torn wide open for all who believe. The ultimate fulfillment. Jesus Christ is our high priest, he is our mercy seat, and he is the mediator of a better covenant. What's really interesting here is how the narrative shifts entirely. In the New Testament framework, the physical ark is superseded. Jesus Christ is presented as the total fulfillment of everything the ark represented. According to the text, the instrument through which God chose to reveal his presence shifted from a golden chest to a living Savior. The greatest miracle was never the object. The greatest miracle was the God who met his people there. To summarize this profound journey, this quote really hits the nail on the head. The true treasure of history isn't finding some lost ancient machine buried in the desert sand somewhere. According to the texts, the far greater treasure is knowing the divine presence that made that simple wooden and gold box unlike absolutely anything the world had ever seen. What other ancient biblical mysteries might be pointing us toward a deeper spiritual truth? Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought for today. If the Ark of the Covenant was ultimately a divine signpost pointing us toward a much grander reality, what else is out there? What other ancient mysteries might be pointing us toward a deeper truth? Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop seeking the truth behind the history. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.